Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to create a cool smart bathroom light timer. In this video, when you take a shower, you will be notified every 5 minutes with different light colors. I will start with a simple diagram to make it easier to understand. First, we check if the light is on. In my case, I don't use a presence detector because I have an Aquara temperature and humidity sensor. I use the humidity derivative to detect when someone is taking a shower. The advantage of using the derivative is that it only takes into account the variation of the humidity. So if the derivative is not above a certain threshold, the light will stay in normal white mode. And if the derivative is above the threshold, we then check whether the current time is within a specific time range. This is useful, for example, if you go to the bathroom at night and don't want a very bright light. So if the time is outside the time range, we dim the light. If inside the time range, 5 minutes after the light turns on, we make a first green blink. 5 minutes later, if the light is still on, we blink blue. 5 minutes later again, we blink red. And if the light is still on after that, we send a continuous red light and send a notification. So let's begin. First, I open Home Assistant, and the first thing I will do is to create the derivative sensor. If you have a presence sensor, you can skip this part. Go to the Helpers tab and create a new helper. For the input sensor, choose your humidity sensor. And for the precision, you can set 3 for example. And for the time unit, select minutes. That's it for this part. Now we go to Node-RED to create the automation. The first action is to get the derivative. So take an event state node and select the derivative helper we just created. For dimming the light, we use a time range node. If we are in the different time range, we check if the light is on. I forgot earlier to mention the derivatives check. I set the threshold at 5 for 30 seconds. I added an inject node just for testing. To find your own threshold, open the history dashboard and look at the derivative value when you take a shower. In my case, the derivative got above 60% per minute, and I found that a threshold of 5 for 30 seconds worked perfectly. Note that the threshold also depends on where you place your sensor. If you get too many false detections, just increase the values. If you don't detect anything, decrease them. If the light is on, I set full brightness and a color temperature of 5000 Kelvin, which is a bright white light. Now I will create the blinking part. For this, I use a trigger node and a counter node, but of course, there are other ways to do it. For example, using only triggers without a counter. The trigger sends a message every 5 minutes to increment the counter. The counter goes from 1 to 4 because you have 4 color states. When the counter is 1, we blink green. In the action node, I use RGB values and set the green parameter to 255. I use a wait until node to keep the color for 2 seconds and then return to white. I repeat the same thing 4 times, changing the color to blue or red. I made a mistake here because I modified the white value instead of the red one. I should have changed the third parameter. Now I handle the reset of the counter, otherwise it will stop at red and never restart. I use a change node to send a reset message. When the counter reaches 4, I send the reset message. I also send it to the trigger. When the counter is in the 4th state, I set the light to continuous red. For the notification, I use a delay node and a trigger node. For the delay, I put 5 minutes. For the trigger, I resend the notification every 15 minutes. I use a change node to create a message I want to display. Then I send a notification using an action node with the notify service. The title is what appears in the notification, and I add the message I created before. I also add 3 actions: turn off, remind, and ignore. I made a small mistake earlier because symbol should have been symbols with an S at the end. To undo the action, I add an event node. To know which event to use, go to the Events tab in the Developer tool and check the event name. Then I use a switch node with event.action to process each action. If the user selects turn off, I turn off the light and reset everything. If the user selects ignore, I also reset everything. If he selects remind, there is nothing to do. If someone turns off the light manually, the reset must also happen. I make sure also to do that for all the states using linked nodes to avoid a messy flow. Finally, I take into account the physical button used to turn on the light. I use a Nike Air Zigbee button, so I look for X MQTT topic. To do that, I open MQTT Explorer. Since I use Zigbee to MQTT, the button appears only after pressing it. I forgot to include the action earlier, so I add it now. Here again, I need to handle the reset and the time range when the button is pressed. Now everything is in place and we can test it. For testing, I reduce the delays and triggers. At first, it did not work because I forgot to set the entities. Now it works. At some point, I had the issue where I changed the wrong RGB parameter, but after fixing it, everything works. I wait for the notification. Perfect. The light turns red. I test again. After a while, I get the second notification because I didn't use the action, and that's what we want. I run another test. everything works. So I put in the description where you can download this Node-RED automation. Thank you, and if you found this helpful, thank you for sharing and subscribe to this channel. Thank you again and take care.